Let's see if we can shed some light on what it means to talk about the mood of the verb. Now, mood is one of 4 kinds of indicators or aspects of the verb, ways in which we can talk about the verb, and the other 3 are tense. Tense tells you about when something happened, so present, past, or future, and we also have aspect. That tells you a little bit about the duration over time, or the way the action extends over time, if it was finished or continued or something like that. And then the last one is voice, and that tells you if the action is active or passive. Now, mood is a little bit different from these, because what mood tells you about is the speaker's attitude towards what's being described. So the attitude. And let's see if we can make some sense of this. And we'll start with the indicative. So we have 3 moods here in English. We have the imperative, the indicative, and the subjunctive. And the indicative is all about being fairly sure or confident in what you are describing. And that's why a lot of the time with the indicative, you're describing facts. So an example would be something like, he kicks the ball. I can see that. He kicks the ball. I don't know why I always use kick as the example in grammar videos, but he kicks the ball. This is a fact, and I can observe it. So a lot of times the indicative is being used for things that you can describe, that you can see, that are going on, that are true. You don't have to physically see them, but they are true in the larger world out there. The other thing that you can use the indicative for is for questions. So you can ask questions with the indicative as well. And you could say something like, did he pay? And here we have a helping verb, did, and we have the regular verb and the question mark, and we say, did he pay? So that's also the indicative. Then we have the imperative, and the imperative is all about commanding people to do things. In fact, I would say that the imperative is the easiest one to remember. It's fairly straightforward. You just got to request something or command something, and you could say something like, pass the ball. All right, let's say you're playing a sport. You say, pass the ball, exclamation mark. And then pass is the verb, and pass is in the imperative mood. So if we go back to our sense of attitude then, if the indicative is about being confident that something is a fact, even in a question, you're still expressing in the same way, then the imperative is about desiring something. It's about desire, it's about wanting something, okay, and it's about demanding. That's your attitude towards the action. And then the last one is the subjunctive, and this one is the hardest. And it's hard to describe the mood here. I suppose what we could say is that the mood is a little bit more speculative. Maybe that's a good word for it. Because what the subjunctive typically refers to is actions or states of being when it comes to the verb that are more hypothetical. These are often more hypothetical. And they may, in fact, be conditions contrary to fact. Contrary to fact. Okay, so, or at least not known to be fact. We don't know yet if these are facts. So the subjunctive then is a more kind of hypothetical type of mood. And let's zoom into this a little bit more and give you a couple of examples. And we really should treat the subjunctive separately in a video by itself. And I'm sure we'll do that at some point because it is really quite tricky. So as I mentioned, or did I mention this? No, I didn't mention this. The subjunctive is often being replaced by modal auxiliaries. So replaced in English often by modals. And a couple of examples would be should or could. Okay, and you can see in there already that sense of the hypothetical. Or you should do this. It's not necessarily something you are doing. It's not indicative. You're not describing something that's happening, but it's a more hypothetical, contrary to fact kind of action. You should do this, and you might do this, and you may do this, right? These are also sort of more subjunctive, hypothetical states. Let me give you a couple of examples then of where you can actually see this in practice. And the first one here is with I. So let's say you say, if I were sick, and you can finish this, you could say, I would binge watch TV all day or something like that. But if you start with if I were sick, then were is the subjunctive. It's not was. Was would be indicative. Okay, but it's were. It's a hypothetical statement. If this were the case. And that's where sometimes people who are not familiar with this, they make this mistake, whereas native speakers tend to know intuitively that they're supposed to use were. But the reason is because were is the subjunctive. Here's another example, and this one you may not be familiar with. So let's say you write, or you say, I suggested that he heed my advice. Okay, that he heed my advice. And you can see here that heed is not heeds. If this was the indicative, you would say he heeds, right? But heed here is the subjunctive, and it's missing that S. That's how you can tell. And that's because this second clause, he heed my advice, this is not actually fact, but it's something that I'm suggesting. It's a condition contrary to fact. It's a hypothetical situation, and it may or may not happen. So to summarize then, what we have is we have three moods, the imperative, the indicative, and the subjunctive. The indicative and the imperative are very common, and the subjunctive is increasingly rare. You could actually ignore it to a certain extent, but you will see it still show up in certain instances, and also in these old expressions that are still with us. So we'll finish with one example here. Let's say you say, God help us. God help us. This is the subjunctive, because in the indicative it would be God helps us, but this is more of a hypothetical, contrary to fact statement. It's a statement about what we would like to happen. That's it for the mood of the verb.